Every day, around 100 million barrels of oil are traded across the world. Saudi Arabia, the United States, China, India, Japan. Different countries, different languages, different governments. Yet, for decades, most of those deals have been priced in one currency, the US dollar. Why? If China is buying Saudi oil, why not just pay in yuan? The internet has a simple answer. America forced the world to use the dollar through a secret deal with Saudi Arabia. It's a compelling story. Some parts are well documented. Others have surprisingly little evidence behind them. So, instead of repeating the myth, let's trace what actually happened. Because the story of the petrodollar begins with World War II. By the end of World War II, much of Europe and Asia had been devastated. Factories bombed, infrastructure destroyed, governments buried under debt. But the United States looked completely different. Its factories had spent years producing tanks, ships, aircraft, and weapons. Its economy emerged larger than ever. And most importantly, America now held around 2/3 of the world's official gold reserves. The world needed a stable financial system. America had the strongest economy and the biggest vault. So, in 1944, the victorious Allied nations met at Bretton Woods and agreed on something new. The US dollar could be exchanged for gold at $35 an ounce. Every other currency would peg itself to the dollar. America becomes the anchor of the entire global monetary system. Through the 1960s, America spent heavily. The Vietnam War, the space race, President Johnson's Great Society programs, the economy kept growing. So did government spending. To finance it, more and more dollars entered the global economy. At first, nobody worried, until foreign governments started doing the math. There were now far more dollars circulating around the world than America actually had gold to redeem. If everyone demanded their gold at once, the promise couldn't be kept. And some countries started asking for exactly that. The system was quietly collapsing.
America faced an impossible choice. Stop printing dollars or stop exchanging them for gold. On August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon made his decision. The United States would suspend the dollar's convertibility into gold. Temporary, he called it. The gold window never reopened. For the first time in modern history, the world's reserve currency was backed by nothing physical at all. Not gold, not silver, just confidence. And that raised an uncomfortable question. Why should the world keep holding dollars at all? The US desperately needed a new way to force the world to use its money. And a massive geopolitical crisis was about to give them the perfect opportunity. On October 6, 1973, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel. It became known as the Yom Kippur War. Because the United States supported Israel, the Arab members of OPEC retaliated with an oil embargo against the West. Oil prices quadrupled almost overnight. Inflation spiked. The US economy was pushed to the brink of collapse. To prevent this, in 1974, Secretary of State Henry Kissinger flew to Saudi Arabia. What came out of those talks is where the popular legend and the actual record start to diverge. The story goes that Henry Kissinger flew to Saudi Arabia and struck a deal in total secrecy. America would protect the Saudi royal family, militarily, permanently. In exchange, Saudi Arabia would sell its oil only in US dollars. However, according to the declassified State Department records, the agreement created two joint commissions, one for economic cooperation, one for security. Washington offered Saudi Arabia security backing. Riyadh, flush with a sudden surge of oil revenue after the 1973 price shock, agreed to recycle much of that money into US assets, quietly buying American Treasury bonds. Now, pay close attention. Nowhere in the official 1974 agreement does it say Saudi Arabia must price its oil exclusively in US dollars. And here's the detail that really gives it away. Saudi Arabia kept accepting British pounds as payment for oil for months after this deal was signed. If a secret pact had truly locked oil sales into dollars alone, that shouldn't have been possible at all. So what actually happened? The dollar became the oil currency not because of a secret handshake, but because of a strategic alignment of interests that made sense for everyone involved. Think about it from Saudi Arabia's side. You suddenly have billions of dollars in oil revenue. You need somewhere safe to put it, somewhere liquid enough to handle billions of dollars moving at once. The US Treasury market is the largest, most liquid bond market on Earth. Nothing else can absorb that much money and offer that much safety. So the Saudis bought US Treasuries, and once you're earning dollars and investing in dollar assets, it makes sense to just get paid in dollars too. Now let's talk about why this system became so powerful and why the US has quietly worked to protect it. Every time a country buys oil, it needs dollars. Every time Saudi Arabia earns dollars, it reinvests them in US assets. That does three things. 1. It strengthens the dollar. Constant global demand keeps it artificially strong. 2. It keeps US interest rates lower. Foreign governments buying treasuries is functionally foreign governments lending to the US cheaply. 3. It helps finance US government spending and, indirectly, the US military, which in turn protects the oil and the shipping lanes the oil travels through. It's a closed loop. Oil priced in dollars, dollars invested back into America. That investment funding the government and the military protecting the oil. This is what economists call petrodollar recycling.
Today, around the world, central banks don't just hold gold, they hold foreign currencies too, called foreign exchange reserves. Think of it as a country's emergency savings account. If its own currency crashes, if imports suddenly become expensive, or if financial markets panic, those reserves become a lifeline. The dollar still makes up roughly 57% of global foreign exchange reserves, the largest share by far, though slowly declining. This dominance gives the United States a superpower unlike any other in history, the power of financial sanctions. Because so much of global trade eventually clears through the US banking system, Washington can cut a bank, a company, or an entire country out of the dollar system almost overnight. Sanctions don't physically stop a ship from sailing. They make paying for those ships far more difficult. So what happens when a country tries to step outside this system? This is the part of the story most retellings lean on hardest. In 2000, Saddam Hussein got UN approval to switch Iraq's oil sales from dollars to euros. In 2003, the US invaded and toppled his government. Once in control, the US reverted Iraq's oil sales back to dollars. The pattern seems obvious, but historians have found no credible evidence that the currency switch was the cause of the invasion. Iraq's invasion followed years of sanctions, weapons inspections, and a post-9/11 push for regime change. The euro switch was one line in a much longer file. Or look at Venezuela, which sits on the largest proven oil reserves in the world, nearly 300 billion barrels. To bypass crippling US sanctions, the Venezuelan government stopped using the dollar and started accepting euros, Chinese yuan, and even created their own oil-backed cryptocurrency called the Petro in 2018, though the Petro token was ultimately a disaster and was completely shut down in early 2024. The US response wasn't an invasion, it was sanctions, an oil embargo in 2019. Venezuela's state oil company cut off from US financial markets, assets frozen. Venezuelan oil production collapsed from 3 million barrels a day to barely 700,000. But reducing Venezuela's collapse to currency choice alone misses most of the picture. Years of underinvestment, falling production, domestic policy failures, and political instability all played a part too.
None of this means the system is untouchable. It's shifting, slowly. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the US and its allies froze Russian dollar reserves and cut key Russian banks off from SWIFT. Russia couldn't access its own money or trade with most of the world. In response, Russia and China leaned into their own currencies. By 2025, over 90% of Russian oil sold to China was settled in yuan, a figure Putin confirmed himself. Saudi Arabia has said it's open to accepting currencies beyond the dollar too, but weigh that against the full picture and it's still a small slice. The dollar still dominates global oil trade by a wide margin. That shift is happening for boring reasons: diversification, geopolitics, trade patterns changing over decades, not because of a room in Riyadh in 1974. So why is replacing the dollar proving so difficult? Because building a new reserve currency is harder than picking a different symbol. The dollar has deep liquidity, decades of institutional trust, and infrastructure nobody else has built at scale. Several Gulf currencies, including Saudi Arabia's Riyal, are still pegged to it. Drop that overnight and you risk hyperinflating your own economy. It took Britain's pound sterling decades, 2 world wars and a depression to lose its throne to the dollar. Global finance doesn't pivot overnight. The petrodollar isn't dead, it's evolving, slowly, the same way it always has. I'll see you in the next one.